Hey, it doesn't matter if you're one of the top-ranked playoff teams in your league or you're just playing the spoiler. There's still some decent pickups out there on the waiver wire here for Week 14. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's having a great week out there. Here we are, Week 14. For most of you, the start of your fantasy playoffs. And there are a lot of good names out there to pick up. Had some more key injuries this week. Hate to see that. But hopefully you can put a bid in here for some of these guys and they can help you throughout your playoff stretch. Got the names scrolling along the bottom. And I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. The season's winding down. Let's talk about the names we need to add here for Week 14. Bye weeks are over, so more than likely you have your solid set starting quarterback. I'll do a quarterback start-sit ranking video later on in the week, but there's not a whole lot of options out there to pick up. More than likely, like I said, you have your starter already. We're going to kick it off with the running back position. First name on the list, Rashaad Penny of the Seattle Seahawks. Hasn't done a whole lot this year. Had a decent game Week 10 where he had his 12 carries for the 108 yards and a touchdown. But why do we want to add him now? Well, Chris Carson's dealing with a dislocated finger. He should still be okay to play. But all of a sudden, Rashaad Penny's starting to get more and more opportunities in this Seattle offense, which has been one of the highest producing run games in the league this year, which is a total surprise. Rashaad Penny's going to get more of a chance down the stretch here, though. They need to see what they have with their first-round pick. Where can they kind of slot him in at for next year? He's looked explosive as of late. This past week, only had 7 carries. Turned it into 65 yards and a touchdown. Definitely a name you need to pay attention to out there. Right now, only owned in 21% of leagues. If you have a roster spot available, he's not somebody who you can pick up and start this week. Tough matchup against Minnesota, but if you're looking for some bench depth, possibly somebody who gets some heavy carries down the stretch, his next 2 games after this week, San Francisco, Kansas City. Decent matchups, could come in handy here late in the season. Next up is going to be Justin Jackson of the Los Angeles Chargers. Probably going to be one of the top ads this week here for Week 14. He looked great last week in the opportunity that he got for the Chargers. Only 8 carries, turning into 63 yards and a touchdown to go along with his 7 carries for 57 yards the week prior against the Cardinals. The guy is a better early down runner than Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is kind of solidified into that change of pace, pass-catching type of role. He can't really handle the early down work. Justin Jackson could get that work going forward, at least until we see Melvin Gordon come back. There's a chance that the Chargers play it safe with Melvin. As long as they're still winning ball games, they don't need to rush him back. I'm looking for Justin Jackson to take over the early down work this week. And if he does, he's got a decent matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe you're in a pinch. Maybe you're dealing with some injuries. Justin Jackson, not only can you get off the waiver wire, being only 12% owned, but he's somebody who could have some sneaky flex play value here in Week 14. Next up is going to be Jaylen Samuels of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why? Because James Conner went down with an injury this past week, and there's a real possibility that he doesn't not only play this week, but it could be multiple weeks. If that's the case, Jaylen Samuels becomes very intriguing. He's got a matchup this week with the Oakland Raiders. The awesome part about Jaylen Samuels, in some leagues, mostly in Yahoo leagues, he has tight end eligibility. That's awesome, because you could actually put a starting running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers if it works out that way in your tight end spot if your league has that option. If not, he's still going to be a solid play if Conner sits. Somebody who's going to get a large amount of volume. The volume in that running game for Pittsburgh kind of just comes with who's ever in that backfield. If they're in the backfield, they're going to get the touches. Jaylen Samuels very active in the passing game, more so than the run game this year. But like I said, if Conner doesn't play, Samuels only owned in 3.2% of leagues. He becomes a must-add and a possible start, depending on what happens with James Conner going forward. More of a bench stash here, but let's talk about John Kelly of the Los Angeles Rams. Last week I sat on this show and said, hey, Malcolm Brown may not be a bad ad just in case something were to happen to Todd Gurley. We're starting to see some of these injuries creep up with some of our stud running backs, the Melvin Gordons and James Connors. Need to make sure you have plan B on your bench. Malcolm Brown now has a clavicle injury that could require surgery, which would put him out rest of season. John Kelly would pretty much then become the number 1 backup to Todd Gurley and that offense. He's somebody who get a huge workflow. And look what he did. He hasn't done anything all season. He's got a whole lot of nothing this season. But look at his preseason games. The guy absolutely dominated in the preseason. He's somebody who we really liked a lot coming out of college. He has a good pedigree. He needs the opportunity. If anything were to happen to Todd Gurley, he would automatically jump up into that RB2 status. He just needs the opportunity. Pick up John Kelly if you need a little bit of insurance on your bench. All right, by a show of hands, how many people saw that press conference a few years ago with Conor McGregor when somebody started talking behind him and he turned up and looked at him and said, "Who the is that guy?" That's kind of what this is like. We're going to talk about Jeff Wilson Jr. of the San Francisco 49ers. Why? Well, Matt Breida has pretty much already been ruled out for Week 14, and Jeff Wilson Jr. had himself a decent ballgame this past week where he had 15 carries for 61 yards, added in another 8 receptions for 73. Jeff Wilson Jr. could be the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers going forward, and now they have a matchup with the Denver Broncos. Not a bad matchup. He's somebody who is currently owned in, almost 0% of leagues, so he's widely available, and he's a starting running back in the NFL. If nothing else, he's definitely worth an add. If you're looking for some bench depth, he's somebody who could have some value here the next few weeks, at least for the next 2 weeks. Week 16, he's got the Bears. Not so much upside there, but he's definitely worth an add if you're looking for some roster depth at the running back position, especially this late in the season. Week 14, to find what could be a starting running back for the next week or two, it's decent value. All right, moving on to wide receivers now. First one is Adam Humphries of the Tampa Bay Bucks. And I guess you could kind of throw Chris Godwin in here also. As long as Deshaun Jackson sits out, both of these guys have huge upside. Another positive with it too, they play the Saints this week at home. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And Adam Humphries has probably been the most consistent receiver in that offense over the past few weeks. Yeah, he's not going to go up there and put up the huge 100-yard games and a bunch of touchdowns. However, he is getting the touchdowns. He's had 5 of them in his last 5 games. Double-digit points, 5 out of his last 6 games. Definitely a great PPR option. Somebody who's going to be looked at early and often in a game that we could see a lot of offense against the New Orleans Saints. Adam Humphries is only owned in 41% of leagues, and he could actually be picked up and started as a flex play this week and have decent upside. If you're looking for a wide receiver, for a flex play, don't look any further. Go out there and try to grab Adam Humphries. All right, Curtis Samuel of the Carolina Panthers is next, and he's somebody who could see a slight uptick in volume now that Greg Olsen will miss the rest of the season on injury. Curtis Samuel's been sneakily good here the past few weeks. 3 touchdowns in his past 5 games, and in those 5 games, he's gone for double-digit fantasy points in 4 of them. Definitely a solid PPR option. This past week, 6 catches, 88 yards, 15 fantasy points. He has the touchdown upside. He could see the slight uptick in volume. He's only owned in 12% of leagues, and he's somebody with a matchup coming up in Cleveland that I would actually pick up off the waiver wire and not think really against starting him as a flex play this week. Is he a must start? In my opinion, no. But if you're looking for a flex spot, go out, grab yourself Curtis Samuel. I like the matchup. I like the recent production. He can really help carry you this week in Week 14. Dante Pettis is somebody who needs some serious consideration on this list also. Over his past 2 games, he's had over 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns combined in those 2 games. Yes, a lot of it is because Marquise Goodwin and Pierre Garçon have been out, and Dante Pettis has been their top receiver. But he's actually done great with the opportunity, started to build some chemistry with Nick Mullins, and this is something going forward. Dante Pettis could be very productive down the stretch. He's only owned in 2% of leagues right now, so he's highly available. And he's got matchups the next couple weeks against Denver, Seattle, and then Chicago in Week 16. He's a solid add. If you're looking for some wide receiver depth for the playoffs, maybe you're in a pinch and you need a flex play, Dante Pettis is somebody who's been putting up great numbers the past few weeks. And if Marquise Goodwin and Pierre Garçon are out again, I would expect something similar from him this week. I can't believe it's come to this. I would back out right now if I could, but it's been in the ticker all along, and you guys have probably been waiting for it. Zay Jones has made the list as a wide receiver pickup for Week 14. Coming off a great game against Miami where he had 4 catches for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. That now gives him 20-plus fantasy points 2 out of his last 3 games. And now they play the New York Jets at home. Josh Allen has seemed to be a little bit better. I mean, he's one of the top fantasy quarterbacks here over the past couple of weeks, mostly because of what he's doing with his legs on the ground. But he's actually opened up the passing game slightly, and there's not a whole lot of other options there besides Zay Jones. Kelvin Benjamin? Yeah, no thanks. Charles Clay? Thanks for dropping the wide open touchdown to not. I mean, there's just no other options behind Zay Jones, really. And he's somebody who's been somewhat productive. He has he has 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games. And he's got a decent matchup with the Jets. Now, it's week 14. More than likely, you're in the playoffs. Do you want to pick up Zay Jones and start him? I don't. Really, I don't. But if I need some bench depth at wide receiver, there are worse options out there. He's worth the stash. He's only owned in 1.7% of leagues, which pretty much says that 99% of people are really smart. However, like I said, if you're looking for a high upside play that's played decent here the past few weeks, Zay Jones needs some consideration. All right, for tight end, we have a lot of the same names we've talked about for weeks after weeks after weeks. Maybe you had Greg Olsen and you just lost him. You're looking for another option. There's a few names that I'm going to throw out here. CJ Uzomah, only owned in 31% of leagues. Now AJ Green is gone. Uzomah seems to be back to close to 100% health. He could have a decent upside for you. Chris Herndon of the New York Jets, somebody who's highly involved in that passing offense. The problem is that passing offense isn't what you would call consistent. However, he is one of the top targets in that offense, only owned in 14% of leagues. Jonnu Smith, somebody with some huge big play potential. Doesn't have the volume to really make him a weekly must start, but has high upside if you're really looking for a tight end that's you got that boom potential. He's only owned in 10% of leagues. Gerald Everett of the Los Angeles Rams, only owned in 8% of leagues. He's somebody who's had some decent games 2 out of the last 3 weeks ago. He has high upside in a high-powered offense. He's somebody that could help you out in a pinch. Ian Thomas, he's the one he's taking over for Greg Olsen. Not somebody who's going to automatically incur a lot of production. I've kind of talked about how I think Curtis Samuel gets a little bit more of a bump, but if there's no other options, if you're in a deep league, he's also worth consideration. Not a whole lot of solid tight ends out there on the waiver wire that you feel comfortable picking up and starting and not really worrying about it. These are the same type of names we talked about, but I wanted to throw them out there for you guys again in case you're looking for a little bit of help here in week 14. All right, those are my top waiver wire ads here for week 14. Hopefully that was able to help you make your decisions a little bit. Congratulations on making it to the playoffs. And even if you didn't make it to the playoffs, go play Spoiler. It's a lot of fun to keep somebody away from fantasy championships. Don't give up just yet. I really appreciate your support. Looking forward to talking to you guys all year long. This is a channel that goes all year. Don't be unsubscribing and leaving thinking that the season is almost over, because we're just getting started. There's some big things coming in 2019. You don't want to miss out on it. Really appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.